Shalom Aleichem Internet. My name is Rabbi Sandor Gajzinski, and here is the weekly TorahByte. This week's Torah portion is Parashat Ve'etchanan, and it is chock full with some iconic passages, including the Shema Yisrael, as well as the Aseret HaDibrot, the Ten Commandments. Now, this is not the first time we have the Ten Commandments. The first iteration of them are back in the Parshat Yitro, in the book of Exodus, and this is the second time. Now, they're nearly identical, as they should be, except that there's a few small differences, most prominent of which is the way the fourth commandment, the keeping of Shabbat, starts. The first iteration of the Ten Commandments in the book of Exodus, it says, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat l'kadsho, commemorate the day of Shabbat to keep it holy. Here in Parshat Ve'etchanan, it says, Shamor et Yom HaShabbat l'kadsho, safeguard the day of Shabbat to keep it holy. Now, the Talmud explains that there's a difference between the way you fulfill Zachor and the way you fulfill Shamor. To commemorate the Shabbat, this is us taking the Shabbat and raising it above a regular day by reciting a Kiddush, by declaring that this is a special day, by praying extra prayers, by lighting the Shabbat candles and making a special blessing over that, by having an elaborate meal. These are all ways we proactively raise Shabbat to a commemorative special status. But there's also Shamor, safeguarding the Shabbat. And the way we fulfill that version of the Ten Commandments is by being careful to not violate any of the prohibitions associated with Shabbat. And we all know these are not to light fires, and to not tear or write, etc., etc. All the melachot associated with Shabbat. Now, which one exactly did God say? Did he say Zachor or Shamor? And Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz, the composer of the Lecha Dodi, gives us the answer. In the Lecha Dodi, it says, Shamor v'Zachor b'dibur echad. That both the word Shamor and Zachor, God said in one utterance, something only God can do, which is one of the ways that God made sure we understood that the Ten Commandments came from a divine source. But the question is, which one of them is more important, Zachor or Shamor, to commemorate the Shabbat? In other words, to imbue Shabbat with its spirit, with its purpose, to raise it to a unique status that Shabbat, in a sense, enjoys. Or is it Shamor, to safeguard the process of Shabbat, to make sure that we are careful about the do's and don'ts of Shabbat, and make sure to do it just right as per the Torah? And the answer is that both are equally as important. We actually see this in the juxtaposition of the positioning of those words Zachor and Shamor. In the Torah, we have the Ten Commandments twice. The first time it says Zachor, putting Zachor first, and the second time it says Shamor. In the Lecha Dodi, we say the same. We invoke those same two words, but we actually flip the order. Shamor v'Zachor b'dibur echad. And it actually speaks to a very important point. From God's perspective, from the Torah's perspective, the Torah being the work of God, Zachor is primary. Zachor is the purpose. And the Shamor is ancillary. The Shamor is the process that helps us arrive at purpose. In other words, one should really be focused on is, what's the purpose of this? Why do we do this? As it should be with every mitzvah we do. We should be focused on why we do this. And what is the spirit and purpose of this mitzvah? But then comes Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz, and he put Shamor v'Zachor, put Shamor before Zachor, teaching us a very important point, that from our perspective, from the human perspective, right? This is the song composed by man as opposed to the Torah, which is composed by God. He puts Shamor before Zachor, process before purpose, because in executing the command, the mitzvah, then yes, of course, the goal is to arrive at purpose. But you cannot arrive at purpose if you have not taken the time to study and master the process first. We see this in a very famous example of a well-known coach, Vince Lombardi. Vince Lombardi, the most revered coach perhaps of football perhaps in history. He used to bring in his new recruits when he was a college coach, And these were the best recruits, the best talents from around the world, and they were sitting now with the most famous coach of history to prepare them to play football. And on that first meeting, he would hold up a football and he would say, "This is a football." And then he would immediately toss it behind him and said, "And you're not going to look at it for the next 2 months. You're not going to look or touch a football for the next 2 months." He told the batch of all-star recruits that he brought in, he says, because we're going to go back to basics. We're going to learn calisthenics. You're going to learn how to sprint and how to run. You're going to master process before we start focusing on purpose. Another example of this might be the famous film that every one of us enjoyed back as a kid, or The Karate Kid, in which Mr. Miyagi, when this young boy comes and says he wants to learn how to do martial arts, has him waxing the car, wax on, wax off, and the boy is puzzled as to why this is important. But he does so. He does the waxing on, he listens to his mentor, and only at the end of the film, when he is, in a sense, actually training to be a martial artist, does he realize that what his master had taught him was how to perfect the process without even necessarily focusing in that moment on the purpose, how to do the various hand motions that would be the perfect mastery of the process, so that later the purpose can be imbued seamlessly and perfectly. In Judaism, we have an equal responsibility. Sure, the purpose is what brings us meaning and feeling to the mitzvah, especially Shabbat, the Kiddush, and the commemorating of the special day. But we have a responsibility, if in fact this mitzvah is going to attain its true purpose, that we master the process.